Hi everyone, so today I wanted to talk about how to pass graduate accountancy interviews. Okay, so here's my experience. So I applied to lots of firms and I did get quite a few interviews. Generally the trend was I'd always pass the first stage of interviews, but then not quite get through the final one. Okay, but the one I did get through, More Stevens, was actually the best fit for me. And I passed the assessment centre interview. Okay, and that's where I started my accountancy career and embarked on my journey as a master of figures. So I think I'm going to list a few steps that I think are helpful for passing interviews. It would be good to understand your feedback in the comment section below as to whether you agree or disagree. So I think for me, a good way to perform well at an interview is to have had prior work experience. Not just in accountancy, you don't have to have accountancy experience, but it's good to have any kind of experience, like working in a nursing home or working in Sainsbury's. Okay, having a job will give you a lot to talk about. Okay, you can even talk conversationally about the characters you've met or the clients that you've dealt with. Okay, so it will make you more genuine, I think, if you've done some work experience as opposed to have just studied for a few years, for the 3 years. Okay, I wish somebody had told me that when I was younger. Step 2 is to understand why you want to work in accountancy and why you want to do the ACA. Okay, so obviously you have to do your own research and understand why you want to do these two things. Okay, there are lots of benefits from being an accountant and doing an ACA compared to other professions. And there is a high demand for accountants at the moment. In fact, there's a vacancy. There's so many vacancies for accounting positions. Okay, so there's a high demand definitely for accountants. There's nothing wrong with mentioning the financial security associated with working with being a chartered accountant. Okay, so money is important. It might be important for your job security. So there's nothing wrong with mentioning this. Okay, so just be unique. Make an answer unique to you. Okay, there's no right or wrong answer, but your answer has to be convincing. And for it to be convincing, you have to convince yourself why you want to be an accountant. Okay, why is it better than doing other jobs? Of course, it's not going to be all singing. It's not going to be bells and whistles all the time. But I mean, it might be better than other jobs, and you have to think why it's better than other jobs at least. You have to understand why you want to work for the firm as well. Okay, so where does it fit in relation to its competitors? What are the business risks that it's facing? Okay, and what are the opportunities? Okay, so you have to have done research on the firm, I think, before you come into the interview, because that can differentiate you between other candidates. It's good to know how it ranks in terms of quality. That's actually, I think I'm going to put a star next to that one, because that's the one you want to bring up first, is how it ranks in terms of quality compared to other firms. What do people say about the employees there? So, I mean, what do employees say about the firm? What sort of clients do they have? Okay, so if they're big four, they'll have many listed clients. If they're smaller, they'll have owner managed businesses, okay, where the owner of the business is the same as the director. Okay, so you might, with a mid-tier firm, obviously you're going to be working with smaller clients, maybe on smaller teams. Okay, so you might be able to gain responsibility a bit quicker compared to maybe a big four firm. In big four firm, though, you're working on larger teams, maybe with more more types of people. Okay, so have a think about have a think about what's different about this firm compared to other firms. I also have an understanding of what the goals of the firm are. So is the firm looking to expand significantly? That can also give you an idea of whether it's a progressive firm or if it's going to stay the same as it was before. Okay, so is it looking to grow or is it looking to stay at the same position? I think the other point that's going to help you pass the interview is you need to have examples for all the competencies that that the firm wants you to demonstrate. Okay, and that's where your work experience is going to come into it. And you want to be able to talk about them. Okay, so what you've achieved in a given project, what you've achieved in a given job. Okay, and where possible, try and give figures. Like, like, for example, I had to manage 8 classes of students and I had 4 A-level classes. Okay, so give as many figures as possible. You want to come across as personable. You want people to be able to relate to you. So firstly, I think the type of skill that you need to demonstrate is personal skills. So you want to demonstrate that you're a nice person, but you want to demonstrate the personal competencies associated with personal skills like communication, resilience, and all these kinds of ones. So what normally happens in the interview, I think for most firms, big firms, is that they'll actually take notes as you're speaking your answer. Okay, so they'll actually, because they have to record what sort of evidence you're giving towards those given competencies, so they can reflect on them later. Okay, so the evidence that you give, you have to give evidence of the competencies to do well. The other type of skill they're going to assess you on are business and analytical skills. Okay, they might give you a mini case study, and you have to analyze that case study. Now, to do well in this case study, I mean, you have to have some basic math skills like percentages and division. But you also should You also should try and think about the risks and threats faced by the industry that's being presented. Okay, and sometimes your pre-reading will help with this. Like, for example, I was given a case study where I had to decide whether a flagship store should be set up in New York or Shanghai. Okay, so I talked about the currency movements in the yuan, which I'd previously read about. Okay, so I eventually concluded on Shanghai because I thought I'd read that there was a growing middle class in China, and the population is much higher in China compared to New York, compared to America. Okay, so sometimes your pre-reading might help with this. You should have, for Big Four firms, they're quite intense about this, but you need to have a case study of businesses that have done poorly and businesses that have done well. Okay, so you need to do your research on those and be able to talk about them. If you don't know the answer, if they quiz you more about the case study, if you don't know the answer, just say I don't know. Okay, they might appreciate your honesty, or might think you don't know enough, but you can't. Don't fudge your way through it. Is my message. Don't lie about things. Okay. Part of being an accountant is to accept when we don't know something, because that's when we have to ask for more information. Okay. Now, the next thing you need to understand is the risks and issues faced by the accounting and audit profession as a whole. Okay, so the audit profession is undergoing a lot of scrutiny at the moment. Why is that? Because of corporate failures such as Carillion. Okay, negative publicity is not a good thing for the audit profession or any firm for that matter. But that presents an opportunity in itself, because there's an opportunity for the firms that have the best reputation or the highest quality or get the best marks after regulator reviews. Those firms are going to have a competitive advantage compared to the other firms. Okay, so it might be worth, actually, if I go back to step 3, is to understand what regulators said about the firm. Like, I had an interview, post ACA interview recently, and I passed that interview, I think, because I mentioned that the firm had got a high rating. I mentioned the exact figure, what its rating was by that regulator. Okay, and that helped. The interviewer was one of the partners of the firm, and he was the head of audit quality there, and he was appreciative of my answer because he'd actually directly liaised with the regulators over their review. Okay, so this can be a potential standout point. Step 5 is basically, I always saw myself as a batsman. What does a batsman do? He doesn't do anything until the ball is delivered. Okay, and that's how to approach an interview, really, is to respond to what's in front of you, respond to the question. Okay, and I think I'm not the best at interviews, so what I try to do is not worry about giving an A-star answer. Okay, not worry about including every single detail or presenting it in the best way. Best way is actually to just answer the question presented to you. So just answer the question presented to you. Sometimes I'll ask more questions, and you respond to those. I mean, try and talk as much as you can. But if you're running out of things to say, just stop talking. Okay, and at the end of the day, you want to give as positive perception as you can as possible. So don't say any negative things about you. Focus on only the positives where you can. And that's basically it. I'd be interested to see what your thoughts are. There is one final step, actually, which I haven't mentioned, which is just basically luck. Sometimes you're going to get through the interview, sometimes you're not. It depends on who's interviewing on that day. There's a lot of human error involved. Well, there's a significant human side to the whole process, actually. Like sometimes you'll find that when you're being sometimes you'll find that you've come all the way to London for an interview, but you have to wait 30 minutes or more for the interviewer to come because they're late from a previous engagement. You shouldn't let that throw you off. But I'm saying that your interviewer might not be in the right state of mind, or he'll have other priorities. Okay, so sometimes it just doesn't work out, or sometimes generally the interviewer might not have read your CV in detail. He'll be reading it as you go through the interview. So they might not have a complete, knowledge might be lost between each stage of the application process, which isn't your fault. So, don't always worry if you don't get into a firm. You ideally want to get into a firm that cares about you and invests a lot in you. Okay, so if you're not getting into a firm that didn't take much interest in your application, well, it took enough interest to give you in a role, but the interviewer wasn't present during the interview, then that could be a red flag. So sometimes it actually works out well if you are not given a role that you thought you wanted, because that firm might not have been a good fit for you, and you might have been unhappy when you were working there. So, think of the positives and just try and apply to as many firms as you can. But be serious. I think if you're gonna apply for these accounting firms, you have to do your research. You have to do your research, because that will also benefit you. You'll have a better idea of what you're getting into. So that's what I wanted to say, everybody. I'd be interested if you've gone through the process yourself, any other comments that you feel are helpful. Thanks, everybody. Cheers. Bye.